Hello, everyone, and welcome to our monthly webinar. For those of you who are just joining us, this is a monthly webinar that we have been doing, the Go Green Initiative, in partnership with the National School Boards Association on indoor air quality in schools. And today we're very excited to be joined by our project officer for this grant, Matt with the EPA. He's going to start us off, and then we're going to go into our work with James Parsons, who's with the Choctaw Nation in Oklahoma. We are very excited to welcome you all to this webinar. I will let you know, just a little bit of housekeeping, that because this is a Zoom webinar, if you have a question, and we invite all of your questions, please look at the little Q&A button at the bottom of your toolbar on Zoom, and that's where you can put in your questions. We will get to all of them, I promise. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Matt.
Great. Thank you so much, Jill. As Jill mentioned, my name is Matt Heister. I'm with EPA's Indoor Environments Division and specifically work on the schools branch. I also am the co-lead for the EPA's National Asthma Program. It is a pleasure to be here today with you all and to share just a little bit about some of the work that EPA does to promote healthy indoor environments in schools, including in tribal schools. And I do want to give a special shout out to Jill and the Go Green Initiative and their work with the National School Board Association. They are doing amazing work across the nation to promote energy efficient indoor air quality management programs in schools. And particularly, I want to acknowledge the work that they have been leading and out front on in terms of working with tribal schools and supporting some of our most vulnerable populations. And as Jill mentioned, this webinar is part of a series, and there's a number of things that the Go Green Initiative is doing to promote indoor air quality management in schools, the webinars just being one of them. And I'm sure at the end, Jill will let you know about many of the other cool things they're doing and how to access them. So thank you very much, Jill. It's a real pleasure to be here today. All right. So quickly to kind of what we're going to be covering today. You saw these when you registered, but just as a reminder, there's a few objectives for our session today. First is just to kind of get a baseline understanding of what are some of the implications of indoor air quality in schools, particularly if it's not being managed well, to recognize some of the particular challenge that tribal schools may be facing in terms of dealing with this issue, learning from, in this case, James and the great work he's doing in Oklahoma, and then really to identify some of the tools and resources that are available to help support schools in their IAQ management efforts. And so for our agenda, as you can see, really the bulk of the session today is going to be James because he is our expert. He is the one that is living and breathing this work out in the real world. And so we are really excited to hear from him. In addition, I'm going to spend just a few minutes talking about sort of why proactively managing indoor air quality in schools is important. And then how do you do that? How do you develop sort of a robust IAQ management program? And what are some of the benefits of doing that? Those things include decreased absenteeism, increased productivity, increased physical plant efficiency, and enhancing student achievement. And while this webinar is focused specifically on sort of how to support tribal schools and tribal communities, please know that the approaches and resources that you're going to hear about today are really applicable to any school district or school across the country. So why IAQ is important? Why is this an issue that we care about? Why is this an issue that we spend time on? Well, there's a lot of reasons. I will say this slide is very dense. And so just know that you will be sent sometime in the next 24 hours or so a link that's going to have this recording. We'll have these slides so you can definitely look at this in more detail. But just to cover some of the highlights or key takeaways, and a lot of this is things that I assume or suspect that you already know. One is that America's schools are aging and often under-resourced. It's not a surprise to probably anybody listening to this webinar. The average school building is 55 years old. with 25% needing major repairs, and nationally, about 85 billion annual funding gap for maintenance and modernization. So a huge, huge issue that affects every community across the country. Indoor air quality problems are widespread and largely undermanaged or unmanaged. About 50% of schools report IAQ complaints, yet only around 40% or so have active IAQ management plans in place, which means that we're leaving a lot of facilities without basic protections, and many of them are functioning in reactive mode, which is, of course, more expensive and harder to manage public relations around. So we want to be thinking about how can we shift into a more proactive mindset. As we all likely know, children are especially vulnerable to indoor pollutants. Indoor pollutant levels can be up to 2 to 5 times and even sometimes as much as 100 times higher than you'd find outdoors. And children and immunocompromised individuals face greater health risks because of these exposures. Poor indoor air quality and facility conditions directly impact learning and well-being, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in the next slide. But issues like mold, inadequate ventilation, outdated HVAC systems all contribute to reduced academic performance, increased absenteeism, and the spread of airborne bacteria and viruses. And there's a lot of health consequences that we see every day in our school because of this. These can range from things that are maybe relatively mild, some irritations, to things that are very severe. So coughing, headaches, eye irritation can escalate to, for some populations, asthma attacks, lung and heart disease, and other serious conditions. And worldwide, we know that poor indoor air quality contributes to upwards of 3 million deaths each year. And then finally, kind of a takeaway from this is just the economic and societal costs of this are enormous. Poor indoor air quality results in anywhere between $36 and $92 billion in the US alone in terms of productivity losses every year. And American children miss on average about 14 million school days annually from asthma and allergens, which can be aggravated by conditions in the school environment. So the magnitude of this issue is huge. But that's why we're here, to learn what we can do about it. So let me move to the next slide. Some of you may have seen this report, but if you haven't, it's a really, really great report to look at. This was published a few years ago by Harvard's T.H. Chan School of Public Health, their Healthy Buildings program. It's called Schools for Health Foundations for Success. And it really synthesizes a lot of the scientific evidence that's out there around how to manage indoor environments and how they can affect health, and offers a framework for improving school building conditions, regardless of sort of what type of school or where the school is. And again, I will not go through this whole thing, but some really important takeaways from this report that I think complement what I was just saying in the previous slide. One is that we know school buildings have a powerful impact on student health and performance. The indoor environment directly influences how well students think, how they learn, how they feel throughout the school day. And I would add also the adults in the building. While we do focus a lot of our attention on the kids, there are many adults that are in those buildings every day that also have health implications and impacts from poorly managed indoor air quality. But we do know that students spend about 15,600 hours inside a school building through the life of their time in schools up to graduation. So the quality of the air that they're breathing and the spaces they occupy matters a lot. The research out there is very clear. Building quality affects academic outcomes. Better ventilation, lower CO2 levels do correlate with improved cognition, attention, and test scores. Poor IAQ contributes to asthma and other illnesses, driving up absenteeism and reducing instructional time. And as you can see, the way this is laid out is they have sort of 9 foundations that they've come up with in this report, providing a holistic framework for assessing improving school buildings. And I won't go through all of them, but things like ventilation, thermal health and comfort, lighting, acoustics, water quality, moisture control, et cetera. And when you get a chance to look at the slide in more detail, when you get this in a day or so, you'll kind of see for each foundation, they talk about some of the health effects, some of the cognitive effects, and then what those can mean for student performance. And so as we know, it's really critical that we're paying attention to these issues. We're addressing them because they do have real world implications every day for our students. The good news is that we know that improvements can deliver measurable benefits. When schools make targeted environmental improvements, especially around things like ventilation and moisture control, they do see real gains, from reduced asthma incidents to fewer nurse visits, improved attendance, and even improvements in academic performance. So while the problem is big, it is not intractable. There are definitely things we can do, and we can see real results. And then finally, obviously, that the more we can invest proactively in healthy school environments ultimately means that we're investing in the students' long-term success. So I've mentioned a few times IAQ management plans, IAQ management programs. Regardless of what you call it, the idea really is that you are putting in place hopefully a codified, board approved set of policies that are going to help manage the indoor environment. It's proactive, and ultimately, if it's implemented well and sustained, some of these impacts that we were just talking about, we will start to see some improvements in that school environment. So a written plan really can provide simple, routine, low-cost actions that can help save money, improve health, decrease student and staff absenteeism. One of the things that we talk a lot about is if your ventilation system is shot, you know that, right? If your roof needs to be repaired, you've got water ponding on the roof, you know that. The benefit of an IAQ management program is looking for those things that are less obvious but still impactful, and things that may not be huge capital investments, but a small investment can make a big difference. So part of a comprehensive program is really identifying all of the potential opportunities to make improvements from big to small, and then figuring out how are you going to prioritize those. We know that plans differ varying by the district, where the district's located. There's a lot of factors that can go into sort of what the school decides to manage, but there are sort of three consistent IAQ practices that we consider just good IAQ management. One is source control, right? Obviously, the more we can control what's in the building before it even becomes a problem, the better. So material selection is a great example. What is it we're buying? What is it we're purchasing? Are we thinking about environmental preferable products? How can we manage the source before it becomes a problem? Second would be improved ventilation. What can we do to make sure we're bringing in adequate outdoor air? And again, we realize that in itself can be problematic. If you're in a wildfire zone, outdoor air might not be the best solution. If you're in a densely urban center, outdoor air may be something of a concern. So obviously, even increased ventilation has its own challenges, but in general, the more we can be bringing in fresh air, the better. And then finally, advanced filtration. What can we be doing with our central HVAC systems or with in-room filtration to try and remove the particles and things that are getting into the air? So these are kind of the big buckets of controls that we like to see in a management program, and then sort of how those show up really can depend on the school district. And I will say that at the top, you'll see there is a QR code that will take you to EPA's IAQ Tools for Schools Action Kit, where you can find examples of sort of the components of a good IAQ management program. We also have links to a IAQ management template that USGBC, GGI, and some others have put together that sort of create a comprehensive program, so you don't have to create this from scratch. There are a lot of great examples out there. Okay, I'm trying to be mindful of time here. So what is EPA's role in this? That's a big question. What do we do? Well, we do a lot of things. A lot of what we do is just raising awareness and creating resources. We realize that a lot of times schools just need a little guidance, a little help, some tools to help them sort of figure out how to navigate this issue. So we do provide a lot of resources to help schools implement and sustain an effective program. On the slide, you will see a couple of examples, and I'll talk a little bit more about them in a minute. But all of these materials are available for free of charge. They are readily available through the website, and we really encourage schools to school. And I keep saying schools, but schools could mean you're a community member and you want to help your local school, or you're a parent and you want to get involved in helping manage the environment in your child's school. So these resources are available to everybody. Um, to dive into a couple of them more specifically, um, again, the QR code is a great place that you can click to find some of these, but we have the Tools for Schools Action Kit. We've got guidance on if you're interested in merging energy efficiency with an indoor quality management program, which a lot of schools are starting to do. It makes sense to have the two coupled together. We've got examples of case studies that schools that are doing this have been doing this really well across the country. We've got a professional webinar training series, preventive maintenance guidance. So a lot of resources very targeted toward what schools and districts can be doing to manage indoor air quality. And just to dive a little bit more into a couple of them, then I want to get to James because I know he's got great stuff to share. The foundation of our program is the Tools for Schools Action Kit. Many of you may have seen it, you're familiar with it. It's really practical guidance designed to help schools and districts to identify, prevent, and resolve IAQ problems. It provides step-by-step guidance. There's checklists, best practices, planning tools, and really it's geared around this whole notion of it's a comprehensive approach. Managing indoor quality in schools is not just the facility manager's job, right? It's not just the custodian's job, right? It really is a whole school effort. And so there's checklists and there's really guidance to help every person in the school kind of own their part of it and bring it together in a coordinated way. We encourage folks, if you are just getting started, just trying to figure out what to do, the Tools for Schools Action Kit is a really good first place to start in terms of just seeing kind of what a good program can include. We know that preventative maintenance is really important. The more we can prevent up front, the less we have to react to on the other side, which is always a good thing. So the preventative maintenance guidance provides checklists and other sort of structured ways of approaching maintaining buildings to prevent IAQ problems before they occur. The guidance outlines things like, HVAC inspections, moisture management, cleaning practices, equipment upkeep, sort of all the things that you would want to be doing. And I would bet a lot of schools are already doing some, if not all of it, just to really get on top of these issues before they could become a problem. And again, the checklists are very clear, they're actionable, they're really built around sort of what teams can be doing as they go through and assess a building and the building systems, just to make sure that everything is sort of identified in advance and any early warning signs are picked up on. And finally, I mentioned webinar series. So Jill started out the GGI, Go Green Initiative, has a great growing webinar series instead of online resources. EPA also over the years has developed a number of training resources. And so these are all on demand. They're all, again, free of charge. They are free. They're self-paced training modules that help schools and district staff plan, launch, and sustain comprehensive IAQ management programs. They include trainings on core topics like HVAC, moisture and mold, pest management, managing asthma triggers in the school environment. And then we've got some case-based sessions on how do you implement a program, how do you collect data, how do you use data to make decision-making easier, how can you use data to help make funding recommendations if you do need to sort of get some funding involved for some of these issues. And really, overall, just how do you focus on creating a healthy, safe indoor environment and integrating that with potentially, hopefully, energy efficiency as well. So with that, I'm going to stop. And it is my pleasure to turn it back to Jill.
Sounds great. Thank you so much, Matt. And I can't underscore enough how useful and practical the EPA tools are. So please definitely get out there and check out those resources. As Matt mentioned, and this is a little bit of housekeeping. We are going to send you all an email about 24 hours from now with a link to this recorded webinar in case you want to share it or watch it again or refer to it. We'll also include links to all of the slides and some other resources as well. So be sure to look out for that. And now, the star of our show today, James Parsons with the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. Take it away, sir.
Okay, thank you, Jill. Can you see my slides?
Yes, we can. Perfect.
Okay, good afternoon. I'm Jim Parsons. I'm with the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma, and I'm the manager for our air quality division. So I've got a master's degree in environmental management. I am a mold investigator, lead-based paint risk assessor, asbestos inspector, radon measurement professional, and meth contamination inspector, among other things that I do for indoor and outdoor air quality. I have two indoor air quality technicians that work for me now. They're both brand new and in the training phase, and I have one ambient air quality technician. But we're talking about the EPA Indoor Air Quality for Schools program today. And about 6 years ago, when I first started, I was just taking a lot of webinars and learning everything that I could. And I watched a lot of presentations about this EPA IAQ schools program. And it sounds really cool, but I could not figure out how I could apply it to our facilities because we don't have a large, well, we have one large school, but pretty much everything else is small facilities, Head Starts, daycares, things like that. So I just couldn't really figure it out. I wasn't really involved with them back then. We didn't have the greatest relationship with other departments when I first started out. Because back then it was just me, and before they hired me, there was no indoor or outdoor air quality program at all. So I started everything from scratch, and we had a lot of adversarial relationships with other departments, which has taken me quite a bit of relationship building to get going. But during this time, when I was learning all of this stuff, two of our Head Start facilities had an issue. One of them was a mold issue, which I went out and did the inspection and helped figure it out. Simple water leak. And the other was caused by improper HVAC design, which caused condensation to build up on window sills and other places. And then this was right during the middle of COVID. So all of a sudden that building was vacant. And the deep clean team came in and they did all their stuff, and then they threw stuff back on the ground, and all of a sudden they had mold growing under carpets and all kinds of fun stuff. And this was the time when I started to learn about CO2, because one of my meters that I use is a temperature and humidity meter, but it's a multifunction one. So as I flip from temperature to humidity, it scrolls past CO2. And I said, that number is not correct, because I had seen a webinar about it. So I had to talk to a lot of other people and figured out that that's not right. And then we spent about a year and a half working with the building owners and facilities maintenance and everybody else to figure out how to make it so that that building had the proper turnover rate for the building, so that we wouldn't have all of that condensation. And some of this ended up costing a lot of money. That simple mold issue cost about $10,000 to get fixed. So I started talking to the director of our education about conducting this proactive inspection program of all the Head Start and daycare facilities. And they said, yeah, that would be great. Can you find these when they're only going to cost me $500 to fix and not $10,000? So that was how I got started into using this program. But as you all might have seen just a minute ago in Matt's presentation, this is a big program intended for big schools with big staffs. And there is a checklist for every one of those different staff members to fill out. And they all have to coordinate and work together. And since we're talking about small Head Start facilities, that's just not how it works. They have so many tools and everything is great, but when you're in a small facility with small staff and you tell them, hey, I need you to do something else, they're just not that happy with you. So I decided that I would modify this entire program and bring it down to one checklist with me managing the entire program. And then I would provide advice to all of the daycares and Head Starts. And that went through quite a few iterations. But the facilities that I'm looking at, we have 17 Head Start facilities that are spread across 11 counties, each one of them with 15 to 35 Head Start students. And they're split into the other side of it is a daycare with about that many children. They have a shared cafeteria, teacher's lounge, and playground. So in 2022 is when I really managed to start getting this program up and running. I did manage to conduct an initial assessment at all 17 of those Head Start facilities, and our one larger school. We do operate one large boarding school, Jones Academy, and I was able to conduct indoor air quality assessments in the actual school buildings and all the dorms and all the other buildings. That's why it took me so long. This is only a very small piece of everything that I do, so I have to fit this in between doing everything else. And since then, I've been doing annual assessments of every facility to just go back. Once we get that baseline, we go back and see if everything's still good. Last year, I did have a little bit of an issue with manpower, so this program did get dropped last year, and we are picking back up on it now. So I have not been actually conducted the assessments on any of these since 2024, and I've really got to get busy on that again now that I have these new guys back online. But when I was conducting all of these baseline inspections, I wasn't really going in doing an inspection or any kind of intrusive thing. I was really just going in and walking around and looking and smelling and talking to people. And I had that sensor with me so I could check CO2 levels throughout the building so I could see where something wasn't quite right. Really just signs and odors of mold, which that part was easy for me. I'm a mold inspector. That was the biggest thing that I was doing back then, trying to find that. And the heavy use of deodorizers is a really common indoor air quality thing. If I walk into a building and there's heavy use of deodorizers, the first question I'm asking people is what we're covering up. Another big issue is the use of ventilation hoods in the kitchens because they're noisy and people just don't like to use them, and they don't realize that all the steam being created is actually causing problems. Looking around for pesticides and traps, proper drainage around the exterior. A lot of this sounds like the stuff Matt was talking about just a minute ago. And CO2 levels throughout the buildings. CO2 levels are just, you're probably all familiar with it. CO2 levels are just something that's really easy to measure, and it's a really easy way to measure your indoor air quality. So you can see in the pictures over here, there's definitely a water leak right there. That one is actually not a water leak. That one is caused by condensation from the HVAC systems. We have very high humidity out here, and this is very common in this area. But if they don't take care of it, it's going to lead to a mold issue. Down on the bottom picture, you can see where there has been water coming in through that door, which ended up leading to mold in that wall. And over on the right, it looks like there's an open pipe in the back of that cabinet. And this is one of those buildings where they had heavy use of deodorizers, and I started asking why, and they said, well, it always smells like sewage. And I actually had to go to this building 3 different times before I found this. Doing a lot of different looking around. There were other issues with this building, but I just happened to go underneath this cabinet here. And once upon a time, they rerouted the drain because it was plugged or something. And that is actually an open drain. It goes into the next room, into the laundry room, straight down into the drain system. And it is literally an open drain directly from the sewage system. So no wonder it smelled like sewage in that room all the time. I got facilities to cap it, and we fixed that problem. So I talked about carbon dioxide for a second. It's one of those things I really look at because it's just really easy to measure. And if you can go in and you can see that your CO2 is really high, it's not an issue. We got to get really high for CO2 to be an issue. But when it's a little bit high, there's a range where we would like it to be at. And if it's not there, that's an absolute indicator that something is wrong with the indoor air quality in that building. And that's what leads us to start talking to the facilities guys and the air conditioning people and say, hey, there's an issue in this building. We need to figure something out. And I have had some of those issues be fixed simply by them looking in the attic and going, oh, this duct is disconnected. So some of them are really easy, some of them are not, but we're really looking for differences. CDC wants us to be below 800 at all times nowadays. There used to be some different standards. I don't know if you're familiar with ASHRA or not, the American Society of Heating, Refrigeration, and Air Conditioning. They're the ones that set the standard for where it should be. And it used to be that we didn't want to be more than 700 above outside, which is a residential standard. There was no real commercial standard. But during COVID, they changed their mind about that, and there was a lot of confusion and back and forth during COVID. But the current standard is that everybody should be around 800 or below at all times, which is very difficult to do for an old facility. So it's a lot of give and take on that. One of the biggest things that I learned while doing this is when you're taught that you got to go talk to all the building occupants, because not everything is visible. Even that one where I just told you it smelled like sewage in there. I didn't smell it. It wasn't happening at the time I was there, but they told me about it. And you don't just talk to just the manager of the facility if you're doing this, because the manager doesn't want to know about any issues. They don't want to report issues or problems. I talked to a lot of the staff, and if you ask them direct yes or no answers, you're going to get no's all the time. If you say, are there any air quality issues? They're going to say no, because they don't know what you're talking about. You have to ask some leading questions to actually pull that information out of them. And a great one is, how long has it smelled like mold in here? I've asked that question in several places, and all of a sudden the people that were saying no, no, no started spilling their guts and telling me all about everything. One big key that we're always very careful about is that we do not ask anything about health symptoms. We are not doctors. And even if they do start, it just leads us down a road that we don't want to go, because they're going to start talking about all kinds of stuff. And some of it ends up being real and some of it does not. So I strictly avoid those questions. Biggest issues that I have discovered, though, is HVAC systems simply not designed properly for the level of occupation in the classrooms. They were designed against older standards, maybe as far back as the 80s, 90s, and the standards just weren't the same, or the class was designed for occupation of like 10 people, and now with 15 students in a classroom plus 3 attendants, there's just a lot more going on, and that HVAC was never designed to handle that. So we're having to change some of our stuff. And that ventilation system in the kitchens, not only while cooking all the time, the dishwasher absolutely creates enough steam to allow mold to grow. This is one of the fun ones that we went to look at, and we couldn't figure it out at first, because the mold was actually in the supply vent for an HVAC system. So air blowing across it all the time. Like, how do we get enough moisture to create mold in something with that much air? And they just happened to kick on the dishwasher while we were standing in the kitchen, and the steam coming out of that thing was blowing straight up into that duct. So we figured it out, and we said, hey, well, don't you turn on your ventilation system? So we went over and turned it on, and it started sucking all that steam straight out the ventilation system. So that was actually a really easy one to fix. And I've been working with trying to talk to all of them, say, hey, you need to turn that thing on all the time, cooking, dishwashing, everything, just run it all the time. But that's one that you'll discover is not, they don't want to use it. It's loud, and there's 100 other excuses not to use it. So I don't know if you can see it very well in this picture right here, but that is an actual water leak. You can see that it's wet there. And when I moved that, I looked up in the ceiling. I could literally watch the pipe drip, and somebody had wrapped tape around it in an effort to fix it, but it was still dripping. So yeah. And they knew about it, and they said they'd reported it, and that was one of my lessons learned, is that even though somebody tells you an issue has been reported, report it through the channels that you use, because I reported it to a different set of people than they've been reporting it to, and they actually sent somebody out to fix it that day. So that was one of the biggest things that I learned with this program. And making the inspection checklist fit the facility was one of the first things that I learned, because the first time I went out there, I had like 11 checklists with me, and a lot of them were repetitive, and man, it was a mess. I couldn't figure it out. So that was where I said I combined everything into one simple checklist, and that's gone through several different changes. And I even did something bad over these years. I stopped using a checklist because I just knew everything, and I knew everything I wanted to look at, so I didn't have a checklist anymore. And that has led to me missing a couple of things because I wasn't using a checklist. And now that I'm training new people on it, I don't have a checklist to give them to say, do this, this, and that. So I'm actually rebuilding part of this program right now. The most recent thing that I have done with all of these Head Starts, and sort of along with the indoor air quality program, is that I have an indoor air quality sensor in at least one room in every Head Start building. These are sensors that I had left over from another project that I was working on, and when that project ended, I said, well, what do I do with all this equipment now? And I said, the Head Starts are a great place for it. And really what I'm looking at, these sensors are for quite a few things. I never see any issues with PM, with particulate matter. What I really look at on these is carbon dioxide and total VOCs that are listed on here. And you can see that some of these numbers are well above. On the carbon dioxide one, those are well above 800, which is not what we want to see. So our facilities people have actually been out to this building several times now. And when I looked at this building today, they were actually running at about 600. So that is great. They've done a lot of work there. On the VOC side, on this chart, anything above 2 is actually considered to be in the unhealthy range. And it was really funny that the time period that you can see on this chart, it started getting cold on about the 20th of October. I don't know why. When the heating system started kicking in, all of a sudden the VOCs in this one building started climbing up like this. Unfortunately, even though they have got the CO2 levels down great, our turnover level is great, the VOCs in this building are still up at an unhealthy level. And I have not yet been able to figure that out, but we're focusing on it. And I put additional sensors in this building to try and help figure it out. And we're still working on that. There's a good possibility that they have a lot of extra deodorizers going in that building, or something else is going on, but this is one of those fun memories. I had one other building that did the same thing, and they did something there and they got everything working perfectly now. The other 15 buildings, no issues. Everything looks great in all those. So I don't know why this one building has this problem. But because I have these sensors out there, I'm actually able to see what's going on in the buildings all the time. And instead of like some of these facilities, it's almost a 3-hour drive from my office to get there. So it's not like I'm going there all the time. This facility in particular is about a 2-hour drive. So it's a good distance away. And not 100% related to the IAQ for Schools program, I have also recently initiated the EPA's Air Quality Flag program at every one of our Head Start facilities. We now have a flag out front of every facility that shows what the air quality is. On that day, I have a purple air sensor located either at or near the Head Start facility. And there's someone assigned at every facility that checks that in the morning and makes sure that the color of the flag is out there. Unfortunately, because we're so spread out, I cannot go supervise these people and make sure they're putting them all out properly. As we've driven around, some of the facilities are doing it every day and they're always correct. And I know of at least one facility that has not changed the flag since I put it up about a month ago. But it is what it is, I suppose. That's something that I have to work with their leadership about. I'm sure you're all familiar with the Air Quality Index and some of the flags that we have out. I also had our marketing department create some of these cool flyers to hand out to all the parents, because I knew as soon as we put a flag out front of these buildings that they were all going to be asking, what is that flag? So I gave them a tool to give to all the parents so that they would understand it. And I've also had the EPA's books that they have nice distributed. I've had these printed up, and I'm in the process of distributing these to all of our schools right now. Why is Cocoa Red was a little expensive, so I only gave 2 copies to every facility. The other ones are little, because that's a full book, and these other ones are activity books. So they're printed on a different kind of paper, made to be thrown away. They're a lot cheaper. Someone will be giving out a lot of those and using them for a lot of outreach stuff. So I know I went over some of that really quickly. And if anybody has any questions.
Well, we do have one question from Nathan. He asks, have you considered involving students and having a science class be responsible for changing the flags? And I know that's probably for older kids. Head Start tends to be a little younger, but any thoughts on involving students?
Thoughts? Yes. Actual ideas on how to do that? Not yet.
Yeah.
There is some stuff. It gets a little complicated out here in Indian country. I really want to start a program where I can start helping the public schools. That gets very political. But yes, absolutely, I have thoughts about trying to be able to do that and get some students involved, and especially because I also do ambient air quality. There's a very wide range of stuff to do with them. I just don't have the actual idea on how to implement that yet.
Mm-hmm. Well, we can help you brainstorm that, James. That was a great presentation. Sandra says, great job, very informative presentation. If anyone else has questions, be sure to put that in the Q&A and we'll go through that. While we're waiting for some other questions, oh, Matt, I see your hand up.
Yeah, mine isn't a question. I just wanted to reflect back a few things that I heard James say that I thought were really, well, I think everything he said was really important, but a few things that stood out for me. And one, James, I think your point is well taken. When I described the program, I described sort of a national program ideal. The reality is, it isn't one size fits all, right? Your facilities and what you need and how it's going to work best for you is maybe very different than someone else. Like you have very remote facilities that you can't just get to every day, right? So, I think that's the reality, and you have to do what works best for your district. This is a voluntary program, so we're not requiring schools to do it, and we're not requiring schools to do it a certain way. Some states do have indoor air quality legislation on the books, but really it's what works best for your district. So I wanted to kind of reflect that back, right? The other thing I heard you say or mention a lot was sort of communication is really important, right? You're going around, you're walking these buildings and you're asking questions, you're engaging the staff, and very thoughtfully, I might add, because you know what you don't want to ask and how to ask in a way to get you information that's useful. But these are all opportunities to get sort of the people in the building a little more engaged in the process by sharing information. And I love that you also, you said, well, with the dishwasher issue, well, we walked over and we turned the vent on, and suddenly we realized we had a solution to the problem. Well, you've now taught them a valuable lesson that they know why that's there. And so I think a lot of it's just integrating what you're doing and sort of when you can sharing that information. I also love that you're involving the community with the flag program. You're sending out, you have your marketing department doing some outreach, you're printing out the materials. I think, again, it's work to have to do that, but I think for districts, the more you can thoughtfully share about your program and what you can do and what you can't do and what you're finding and what you're doing about it, I think it serves the districts well. And again, it's not going to look the same for every district and every condition, but that sort of education outreach piece is really important too. And then there was one more, just the notion of sort of whatever your reporting structure is in your district, make sure that folks know it and that they're using it, and that you're closing, not you, James, but like whoever is closing the loop, so that folks know, okay, you have a complaint, you have an issue, great, let's make sure it's in our system so we can track it, and then we can let you know what we did about it. So it's sort of just making sure that folks, whoever they are using the systems in place to be able to make sure that things are being tracked and monitored and loops are being closed and feedback's being given. So those were a couple things that I heard you say that I thought, regardless of the district that you're in around the country or you're helping, those are all really valuable I think, pieces of information that you were able to share. So thank you very much for that.
We have another question for you, James. This comes from Carl. He asks, why is the CO2 target 800 parts per million? Where is that threshold coming from?
That is from guidance from ASHRA, from the now I can't remember what it stands for. From the HVAC people, from the people that actually write the standards for all of them. During COVID, like I said, it used to be a little higher, and there was only really a residential standard. There wasn't really a standard for anybody else. That was just kind of how they designed their systems. And during COVID, CDC and everybody came out and said, "Oh man, it needs to be 600 because we want to filter out. The more fresh air we get, we're going to filter out everything." And after a little while, they figured out 600 is almost impossible because we're usually around 400 to 450 outside. So 600 is almost outdoor air. And it's really, really hard to get that. And so they backed off. It was probably 2022 or so before they finally settled on 800. And the new, you can call it a standard or a guideline or whatever you want. There's no rule about it. And EPA and CDC now have and they've all kind of settled on this 800 ppm standard, which is still kind of hard to meet with an old system. And you're probably not going to meet it for residential in your house because we typically don't have fresh air intake systems in residential structures. In commercial and industrial, we do quite a bit, or in schools and whatnot. But what they've really focused on is for schools, for students, for places where there's a lot of people. We really want this high turnover rate, which will help reduce the number of germs and everything that are in the air. And that was a lot of their goal for that. But I know typically I don't really stress too hard on the 800 thing because I know how hard it is to get to that, especially in an older building with an older system. So I still do kind of go back to the old 1,000, 1,200. Like if we're around there, it's not perfect, but I'll be okay with that. A lot of it, we're really looking though for differences. Like if I have 800 in the hallway, I should not have 2,000 in a classroom.
Yep, absolutely. Well, and I will tell you this too, Carl, a second part to your to that inquiry may come at our webinar next month. And in just a moment, I'm going to show you a QR code to register for next month's webinar. But one of the things that is so difficult for folks who are working with indoor air quality in schools is knowing what is a guideline and what is a regulation. And there's a big difference. One is mandated, one is a good idea, a strong suggestion, but no enforcement behind it. And next month, we're going to have Dr. Georgia Lagudis from Brown University with us to talk about some state public policy guidelines that they and their partners have put together to help states grapple with this. Many of you may know that, for instance, New York State recently put in effect the nation's first heat levels, the threshold beyond which the classroom temperature cannot go before they close that classroom in terms of the heat. That was the first type of regulation, of its kind in the country. And similarly, other states are grappling with regulations regarding things like CO2, thermal comfort, and other components of indoor air quality. So as we go through our webinar series, we will be dealing with that more and more. I want to mention what you're seeing on your screen right now. If you are following us, you know that part of our partnership with the National School Boards Association is using these webinars as a tool for helping folks earn a Magna Award. That's an award that NSBA has been giving out for 30 years, and now they're focusing on indoor air quality management as part of that awards uh, program. And if you want to earn points for the 2027 awards, we've just closed the applications for the 2026 awards. Go ahead, take this survey, and you can earn points. You'll get a PDF certificate saying that you have completed the survey. They're really easy. They're almost too easy, the questions. It's not hard. And you can save that PDF for your Magna Award application for next year. And then I want to show you the QR code to sign up for our webinar next month. It'll be December 9th, as I mentioned, with Dr. Georgia Lagutis. And I think you'll really enjoy hearing from her. This state public policy guide is something, there's actually a section just for schools. And while we're on this, I'm going to stop sharing for a moment and share one other item with you. This is from the Go Green Initiative website, just one more resource that you can tuck away. This is our website, gogreeninitiative.org. And if you go to our indoor air quality page, you'll see several resources. One of them I'm really proud of. We have started some online courses. If you are just getting started with putting together an indoor air quality management plan for your school district, this is a simple course to take. Documenting your greenhouse gas emissions vis-a-vis your energy use. We have courses on that. And then we have courses, and we're adding more every month to help you with your indoor air quality management plans and measuring that. We also have a really cool new feature, our interactive public policy database. This is a 50 state database designed for local school boards. So, regardless of what state you live in, if you click on your state, you'll get a policy template for a local school district to use that has your state regulations mentioned in it. So, for every state, we have the regulations listed and for your reference, and a state public policy template that your school board can use that references your state regulations. If there are no more questions, folks, we're going to give you a little time back, but I want to thank you all so much for joining us today. I want to thank James and Matt for being here as well. And as we mentioned, we will be sending out an email tomorrow for everybody who registered and anyone who registered but couldn't make it, with a link to the slides, a link to the surveys, and other resources. So thank you all so much for being here, and we will see you next month on December 9th for the next in our series for indoor air quality for schools. Have a great day and do something in your life to go green.